Why is it that the people who help the most often have the least? Think about that for a second. We're told from the moment we're old enough to understand money that success means climbing, that security means accumulating, that the whole point of working hard is to eventually stop worrying about the bill. And most of us believe it. We chase the raise, we chase the title, we chase the number in the account that we think will finally make us feel safe. But what if that number was never really the point? There's a quiet kind of shame that comes with admitting this out loud, the feeling that maybe we've spent years running after the wrong thing, that maybe somewhere along the way we confused being comfortable with being fulfilled. So we push it down. We keep chasing, because what else is there? Here's the thing. There was a man who had every reason to chase the money, every reason to build the comfortable life, the secure life, the life everyone told him he deserved after years of medical training. And he didn't. Not because he couldn't, but because he saw something the rest of us usually miss. Something about what it actually means to live a full life. And in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly what that was, because once you understand it, you may never look at your own definition of success the same way again. This is the true story found in a book called The Boat to Life, co-translated by a woman named Sulagna Plal, who didn't just want to tell this story, she wanted to preserve it. Because the man at the center of it all was her own grandfather, a doctor named Dr. Ashutosh Pal. Now, on the surface, this sounds like it could be any biography, a grandchild honoring an ancestor. But stay with this one, because what makes The Boat to Life different isn't just who Dr. Ashutosh Pal was, it's what he chose again and again when nobody was forcing him to choose it. He was a doctor, that much is simple. But the way he practiced medicine, that's where this story stops being simple and starts becoming something else entirely.
Because he treated patients for free. Not once, not as a rare act of charity to feel good about, but frequently, as a pattern, as a value, as a way of being in the world. And if you're anything like me, your first reaction to that might be, how? How does a man do that and still survive, still eat, still build a life? That question is exactly where this story earns its title, because his life wasn't a straight, easy road. It was, in every sense, a boat, and he had to learn how to steer it through adversity most of us would have let capsize us completely. Here's where it gets interesting, because choosing to treat people for free doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a world that has bills, a world that has rent and food, and every ordinary pressure pushing a person toward the safer, more profitable path. So picture this, a small clinic, a line of patients outside, some of them able to pay, many of them not, and a doctor standing at the door, knowing that turning the second group away would make his life so much easier. But he doesn't turn them away. Now, why would anyone do that? Why would a trained professional, someone who spent years earning the right to charge for his skill, choose instead to give that skill away to people who had nothing to offer in return? Maybe because he understood something most of us forget the moment we start earning, that the point of a skill was never just to be sold, it was to be used, fully, without keeping score of who deserved it and who didn't. And here's the quiet payoff in that. The patients he treated for free weren't the only ones who walked away lighter. So did he. But that's just the beginning, because choosing generosity once is admirable. Choosing it again and again, for years, through hardship, that's something else entirely, and that's where this story goes next. Now, if this were only a story about kindness, it would be a nice story, but it wouldn't be a powerful one. What makes The Boat to Life powerful is that Dr. Asutosh Pal's generosity wasn't tested in comfort, it was tested in adversity. Just imagine it. The kind of adversity that doesn't just make life harder, but makes it tempting to abandon your values altogether. The kind that whispers quietly, reasonably, just this once, put yourself first. But he didn't. Here's the thing about resilience, real resilience, the kind this book is built around. It isn't the absence of hardship. It's what a person keeps choosing while the hardship is happening. Dr. Paul faced immense adversity. The book doesn't hide that. It doesn't paint his life as easy or golden, but through all of it, his commitment to noble service, that word matters, noble, not obligated, not forced, stayed intact. So ask yourself something for a moment, not about him, about you. What would it take for you to stay generous, stay kind, stay true to what you value, even when life is actively making that harder? Because that's the real test, not what we do when things are easy, what we protect when things are not. And this is where the story starts to widen, because his resilience wasn't just about surviving, it was about becoming. Now, here's a truth that doesn't get said enough. Hardship changes people. Sometimes it hardens them, sometimes it makes them smaller, more guarded, more focused on protecting what little they have. But The Boat to Life points to something different in Dr. Asutosh Pal, a man who, through every shift, every difficulty, stayed rooted to where he came from. Picture a boat for a second, not drifting aimlessly, but steady, anchored, even while the water around it moves. That's the image this story keeps circling back to. Not a man who was untouched by struggle, a man who refused to let struggle uproot him from who he was. And that's rarer than we like to admit, because most of us, when life gets hard enough, start to bend our values just slightly, just enough to survive, just enough that we tell ourselves it doesn't count. But if you stay true to your roots only when it's convenient, were they ever really your roots at all? Dr. Paul's story suggests something gentler here, though. It's not about never bending. It's about having something solid enough at your core that even when life pushes hard, you come back to it every time. And that's what let him keep giving, keep serving, keep showing up for people who couldn't pay him back, because his sense of self was never built on what he received. It was built on who he chose to be. But staying rooted is one thing. What comes next in this story is bigger than that. So now, let's go back to the question this whole story is really asking. Not, was he a good doctor? Not even, was he a generous man? The real question is this: what does it actually mean to be secure? We've been trained to think security is a number, a savings account, a safety net built entirely out of money. And there's nothing wrong with wanting stability. That's human, that's reasonable. But here's the deeper part most people miss. Dr. Asutosh Pal built a different kind of security. Not one made of money he held on to, but one made of the lives he touched, the suffering he eased, the trust he earned from people who had nowhere else to turn. And that kind of security doesn't disappear in hard times. It doesn't shrink in a recession. It doesn't vanish when the market shifts, because it was never stored in a bank. It was stored in relationships, in reputation, in the quiet knowledge that when things were at their worst, he showed up. Isn't that the kind of wealth that actually holds up? This is the sweeping, uncomfortable truth The Boat to Life keeps pointing us toward, that the version of security we've been chasing might be smaller and more fragile than the version he actually built. And that brings us to the very heart of why this story exists at all. Because here's the biggest claim this book makes, and it's the one worth sitting with the longest.
The boat to life isn't just a tribute to one man's life. It's meant as hope, real practical hope for anyone navigating uncertain times. And think about how much that matters right now, because uncertainty isn't rare anymore. It's the water almost all of us are sailing through, economically, personally, emotionally. And in that water, it's easy to believe that the only way to stay afloat is to hold everything tightly, to give less, to protect more, to become smaller and more guarded just to survive. But Dr. Ashutosh Pal's life stands as the opposite, that fearlessness in uncertain times doesn't come from hoarding what you have. It comes from staying generous, staying rooted, staying committed to service, even when, especially when, it would be easier not to. That's not naive. That's not reckless. That's a different, sturdier kind of courage, the kind this book asks all of us to consider building for ourselves. Because if a man who gave away his skill for free could still leave behind a legacy this lasting, a granddaughter who felt compelled, decades later, to translate his story into a book so the world wouldn't forget it, then maybe the version of security we've been chasing was never the strongest one available to us. Maybe generosity, resilience, and staying true to your roots is the boat that actually gets you through. So if there's one thing to carry from the boat to life, let it be this. Chasing money isn't wrong, but it's not the only thing worth chasing. And sometimes the people who chase something deeper end up with a life richer than any bank account could measure. I'd love to know, what does security actually mean to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story reached you today, even a little, take that with you. Let it soften something. Let it remind you that generosity was never a weakness. It might just be the strongest thing you carry. Until next time, let books be your true friend. That's the essence.